Welcome everybody to Drum Education Live, episode 70. And today we have the amazing Justin Scott with us. Thank you, sir, for giving us your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Mega excited. I think you're amazing. Love the way you play. And yeah, I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you very much.
Um, so I've got kind of two questions rolled into one.
Okay.
I heard you talking about your first drum teacher, and I think you were saying that you didn't think he was the best teacher. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, firstly, what do you think makes a great teacher, and secondly, what is missing from drum education as a whole?
Boy. Well, for like a good teacher, I guess for me is someone that can. Uh, I mean, my big issue with my first teacher when I was a kid was that um, he just didn't really explain why I was learning the stuff that he would make me practice. And I always had a problem with that as a kid. Like in regular school, I always had a problem with learning anything that I didn't think I was going to ever need. So I really had to understand as a kid why I was working on something, or I would completely lose interest and get frustrated with it. And so I loved the drums, and every time I would show up for a drum lesson, like the best part of it was the first few minutes when he would be talking to the kid before me's parents, and I could just play the kit for a few minutes. And then he'd come in, and that was the last time I'd get to play the drums. He would sit me on a pad and, okay, we're just going to play these, singles, doubles, paradiddles, and learn to read this line. And I'm 6 years old. I have no idea what that's for. And he never explains why I'm doing that. Or all he had to do is say, hey, check it out, what I can do with a paradiddle on a drum set. And I would have been like, oh, that's why I'm learning it. Cool. But it was never that. It was just sit down and do this. So 30 minutes of, for a 6-year-old, that's just incredibly boring. And it's like, I already know how to play. I just, show me some cool stuff on the drums, whatever. So yeah, after that, I just started teaching myself. So I would say as a teacher, I think, if you can explain why the student's working on something and really make it clear what the benefits of it are, I think you'll have a much easier time. But I spent, gosh, 7 years teaching at a music store, just teaching mostly beginners, and a lot of the things that I thought about teaching beginners kind of went out the window once I started doing it. So because in reality, I very rarely ran into a kid that was like me when I was a kid, who like really, really cares a lot about drumming and really wanted to learn it badly. Most of the students I had were, my parents wanted me to play an instrument and I picked the drums. So we're going to try the drums. And so it was like trying to convince them why they should care. And so that was always fun. But if you have a student that really cares, like if they're really interested in it, then it can be really, really fun because you can kind of open up their mind to a lot of possibilities. So yeah, I would just say, to me, a good teacher's someone that can really explain why you need to work on something, and kind of motivate you to do that. And then the other part of the question, like you said, what's missing? You said.
Yeah, I think there's a lot available out there, isn't there, today, like YouTube and just lots of drum teachers. And I wondered if you thought if there was an area that's lacking with, teaching drums.
Uh, I don't know if there's an area that's lacking. I think just about everything in the world right now is available. So um, I guess, and I don't know everything that's out there. I don't spend a lot of time exploring all the different lesson video sites and things like that. But most of the time when I have a student now, the biggest issue that I have with people is that, or that they have, is they don't know what to work on because there's just too much. There's too many. There's too many possibilities, and so they get overwhelmed. So if there was, and there probably is, what these lesson sites that they probably organize things so that you don't have to worry, and they kind of pick a schedule and a routine of things for you to work on. But if there was a way to make that easier for people to kind of decide what to work on, that's always and I understand why people have that problem. I used to have that problem too. Um, and so I guess another thing I would say, like if you've never had any kind of private instruction, that's probably an area that, even if you've done a ton of online lessons or something, it's probably not a bad idea to sit down with a drummer or teacher who's somewhat doing what you're wanting to do, and then kind of working with them to organize a routine for yourself to practice. So yeah, because I feel like because of online lessons, a lot of people kind of decide, oh, I don't need to ever meet with somebody. But there's a lot you can learn with a one-on-one session with someone that you can't really learn in a video. So, uh,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean,
Exactly. I was going to
there's so
say.
much information. So it's not. I don't know if there's anything missing. I think there's almost too much.
I would like to go back to your to the subject of your first teacher. You were saying that he never explained why you were learning stuff. But my question is, do you think he knew? Because one of the things that it happens a lot is a lot of people start teaching because there aren't enough gigs to pay the bills, and they go to teach as an alternative, and they just do what somebody did to them, not asking any questions. So he said probably he thought, okay, my first lesson I spent 40 minutes on the pad, so this is what I'm going to do with my students. Do you think that he knew? Obviously, he knew what to do with a paradiddle, but do you think he knew how to explain it to you?
Um, there's a good chance he maybe didn't. Looking back on it, I think the issue is probably that he just wasn't really interested in teaching. That would be my guess, is he probably just did it as something to make some money on the side. And there's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people that teach because maybe they can't actually play a lot of things that they know. I've met a lot of guys like that. Their knowledge of what they understand about drumming is huge. They could write a book, huge thick book about everything. But if you actually ask them to play, that they wouldn't be able to actually demonstrate most of the things that they know about. So I think there's a lot of teachers like that. But I mean, I was so young. All I knew at the time was you know, I was limited to this one thing every time I came in, and my guess is he probably didn't care enough at the time to make an effort at it. But I was also 6, and I understand what it's like to have a really, really young student. Um, but I really cared about the drums. So for me, like when I had a young student that was like super excited and serious about it, that to me was way, way easier. I would rather have a really interested 6-year-old than a really interested like 60-year-old, to be honest. Because the little kid's brain is like a sponge, and they just absorb information. And a lot of times I'd get people in their 60s or so who they were like, oh, I did this back when I was a kid, and I haven't done it for like 40 years. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be a lot of work, because your brain really isn't in a place to learn information in the same way as when you were a kid. So it ends up being a lot more work. Anyway, that's kind of a side thing, but
You don't tell them that though, do you?
no, of course not. I mean, it's in the end of the day, it shouldn't really even be like, if you're just doing it for fun, then let's make it fun. It shouldn't really be about, I want to be able to play this well by this time.
Mm.
Because most of the time, at that point, they're just wanting to play, music for fun. They buy a drum set because it's fun. So my whole thing was essentially making it fun. In fact, this teacher that taught guitar at the same music store that I taught at, he basically told me, because he had more students than anybody. He at one point had like 50 or 60 students or something at this store. And he's like, I basically got to the point where I stopped teaching books, I stopped teaching theory, I stopped teaching all the stuff you're supposed to teach, and I just started thinking about making it as fun as possible for the kid every single week. And their parents all love me and they bring them back every week. And so he just treated it like, just make it as fun as possible. And so for a lot of students, when you realize that, they're not like, either they're not crazy about drumming, or they're just kind of, oh, I'm just trying it out or doing it for fun. A lot of times it's like, okay, well, let's just make it as fun as we can. Let's turn on some music, figure out the most basic pattern, and get you playing with a song, and just make it fun. Or find a drummer that makes you, we'd watch YouTube videos and find a drummer that makes them go, wow. And I don't care what drummer that is, just find someone that you like. And so yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about teaching by teaching. You learn what not to do a lot. So
True. Kira?
So you seem to me to love practicing and practice all the time, which is the dream, and that's what you spend a lot of time doing. Have you ever had moments not feeling inspired to practice?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say most of the time I don't feel um, most of the time I don't feel super in the mood to practice. But I don't know, my mood doesn't really get a say in whether or not I'm going to do it. So like, I don't know, I feel like uh, my passion for drumming kind of doesn't care what my mood is, I guess. Like, uh, it doesn't get a say. Practice for me is like brushing my teeth or putting my pants on in the morning. It's not something I think about like, oh, do I want to wear pants today? Like, it's just like, I'm going to brush my teeth, put pants on, I'm going to practice. And then there's times obviously where life gets in the way and I can't. And there's been times where I've been burnt out, and I'll take breaks from practicing for a while, but I try not to let it be because, oh, I just don't feel like practicing right now, or I'm not feeling inspired. It's usually because, okay, my brain is fried and I really need to give my brain some time to process, for a while, and then I'll come back to it. But most of the time I don't feel like sitting down and practicing. Like, if I was honest, my brain would much rather go like turn on the PlayStation, or turn Netflix on or something. Like, that's typically where my brain would rather be. But once you form a habit and you kind of, just like anything, eventually you don't think about it. I just wake up and it's like automatically I'm going to go practice. Now the last few years it's been kind of on and off with that, because I have a 3-year-old daughter, and so there's times where it's like I just can't
I
I
didn't
just
know
can't practice. But
I think Kira knows what you're talking about.
that.
yeah, and but yeah, I love practicing. It's the thing I like to do the most. So the process of getting better and learning and pushing myself, that's what I enjoy the most. So that's kind of what I build my time around. That's kind of like the foundation of um, my career, I guess. Is like, can I make sure that the majority of my time every week, of my working time every week, is built around practicing, and then everything else kind of will fall into place because I'm constantly working on the main thing that I do. So that's kind of how I think. But yeah, I mean, life gets in the way. So there's been times where it's like, I just can't practice right now. Or there's times in my life where I was working so much I just couldn't. Um, I was
So,
teaching at the music store, and then I was also working a full-time job at a store during the day, and then I was playing drums at church on the weekend, and I like never had a day off and never could practice for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. And but those can be really good times. Like, if you if you've done a lot of practice in your life and then you take a break, I feel like it's a good thing for your brains. So anyway, I hope that answers the question.
It does,
It
and I'm
does.
gonna ask something else regarding that. As a teacher, sometimes you have students that they understand the importance of practicing and they just do it. But sometimes you have students that don't even, I don't think they even understand that you need to practice. And when you get one of those, how how do you approach that to them? How do you make them understand that you need to do this, otherwise we're going to be stuck in the on this page for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean that's always I I I don't know if I have one way of fixing it, because like I don't know if I ever fixed it. I don't know if I ever had a student that I can say like, oh, I finally convinced them to practice. Like I don't know. Like to me, it's I come back to, I think everybody has different strengths and weaknesses and different things that they're going to naturally like and naturally be good at. And so, especially when it's a younger kid, like I think they should try a lot of things. And if I, I can't personally, I just can't relate to a student that says, "Oh, I just can't find the time to practice." And I'll get asked all the time. People will take a Skype lesson or something with me, and what they're looking for essentially is like a personal trainer for drumming. They want someone to build their whole schedule for them, and then they want them to constantly be checking in with them and making them practice. And I'm just honest with people when they ask me that. I'm like, I can't do that for you, because I don't know how to do that. I never had someone doing that for me. I can't relate to that. Um, I relate to people who naturally want to practice. And if you don't want to do that with drumming, there's probably something else that you can find that you will want to put your time into. So the way that I think most of the time is like, if I have a student that's constantly coming to me, and it's because their parents are bringing them or something, like when I was at the music store, I would just keep working with them. I'm going to keep doing the same work. If they're not practicing, I'm going to keep helping them with that stuff. And when their parent comes to me and says, "Why aren't they moving on to something else?" I'll be like, "Well, because they're clearly not practicing this." Or, but I tried at least at some point, once I'd been doing lessons with someone for enough months. At some point, you have to be honest with them or with their parent that like they're not practicing. Either they don't really care about this thing, or maybe it's just not naturally what they do well. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if I ever came up with like a way to fix that. And it's because I honestly can't relate to it. Like and so I like when someone really has an issue with that, I'll usually send them in the direction of someone else. Like for instance, if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, how do you get into the music business?" And I'll be like, you should probably go take a lesson with Tommy Igo, because he's actually like in the music business. I'm not really. I'm just a guy that practices and puts videos on Instagram. So I don't play a lot of gigs. I've never been on tour or anything. So I always try to like, you probably need to go talk to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And when it comes to getting students to practice when they don't want to, it would probably be the same thing for me. I'd probably say there's probably teachers who are great at that, but that's not me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
much better with people who are like, I love doing this. I want to know more information about it. I'm like, okay, you're perfect for me. Let me just dump all this information on you and then send you on your way. And then you can come back. And I'm much better with that. Which I know in a lot of ways probably makes me not a great teacher. But I
Or
think I'm,
maybe makes you the greatest teacher ever, because then you just found your perfect student.
yeah, I think I will. And it just, you know, if you find, I don't know, find your lane, find the thing that you kind of do. And it's the same thing with your playing, like with the way I think is like, can I create my own sound? I'm going to sound like other drummers, because every drummer sounds a little bit like another drummer, but can you create something of your own that, you're kind of creating your own lane? And it can be the same thing with teaching. Like I'm not going to pretend to know how to teach everything, but if you want to know how to learn things like I've played or how I develop something and you really are interested in it, then I can teach you a lot of stuff. But I do need a particular type of student, I guess, in order to do that well.
Cool.
You know what I like is that you're so honest about all this stuff. Like you're saying, I'm on Instagram and I just like to practice and I haven't been on tour and la la la. And I really think that's important. You're not trying to say, oh, I've been here, I've done that, or I'm going to do this. You know exactly what you want and you're doing it. And I think that's really refreshing to see on Instagram, because it feels sometimes on Instagram that everyone's trying to show that they're doing this tour or they're doing this gig. And what's nice is that it seems like you know what your passion is and you're just doing it. Like the passion is drums and you found the place to grow it. You know, you're just practicing. And I just love that. And I think it's really nice to hear that from someone, because it's real. Because you can get loads of drummers who are off on tour, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I'm just seeing the same, doing the same set every night, and I'm not fulfilled, and I'm feeling crappy about my myself and my drums. Um, yeah, I just wanted to drop that in there. It's just nice. You seem to have found your, you know, the thing that makes you happy pretty early, and that's lovely.
Yeah, I mean, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I haven't done anything that would, typically like give someone a following of some kind. I'm not playing with any big artists or bands. I literally just practice a lot and make videos. And then I have, church gigs and I'll fill in for corporate bands and things. And I'll do sessions. People will send me stuff to record, but nothing that would be, huge. And when I first went to music school, I didn't know exactly what I was trying to do with it. I just knew I needed to go to music school, learn how to learn as much as I could. And then, things would work out is kind of, how I thought about it. And by the time I finished up music school, I realized that I wanted to do the exact opposite that everybody else was going to do. Everybody's like, go get every gig you can and just start gigging every, possible second. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to build my whole career around being able to practice. And I didn't really know how to do that. I just knew that I had to spend the majority of my time developing, and because that's what I realized I wanted to do, was just keep practicing. Everybody at some point was like, oh, you talk to these great drummers and they're like, yeah, I actually haven't. I think it was Thomas Lang actually that said one time, someone asked him about his practice, and I think he said something like, oh man, I haven't really practiced in years. I just go around and I'm too busy. I'm so busy with all the clinics and, recording. And so he's always playing, but he's not really practicing anymore. He's like, I did all that when I was younger. And I heard a lot of people talk about that. Like, oh yeah, the practice stops once you start working. And I was like, no, that's not, I can't do that. I have to be able to practice all the time. So I slowly figured out, through Instagram that I could make a living while spending the majority of my time doing what it is that I really like. So yeah, because I would enjoy touring for about a month and then it would drive me nuts, and I just don't know. I like that I can work from home. I like that when I do decide to work, vast majority of the time I'm working on something that I actually want to work on. So but it's a weird way to make a living. And I think most people would look at my day-to-day life and go, wait, where did you make any money right there? Because all you did was wake up and have coffee and then practice and edit some video. Like, um, but yeah, I love it. It's how I want to spend my time. And like, other than things like, God, family, and friends, I can't think of anything more valuable to me than my time and how I get to spend it. So I would honestly, like, if you said, hey, you can go on tour with this artist, 7 months out of the year and make $1 million a year, I would be like, no, I'd rather make just enough to pay my bills and get to spend my time doing, what I want to do than make all the money on tour with some artists. So that's just me. And I know I'm weird for that, but
I don't
we
think you're
live in
weird
a,
at all.
You're
I
you're
don't
in
think it's
good
weird at all.
you're in good company. I read the book years ago, and it says it's kind of a biography about Gene Krupa, and it says in the beginning of his career in the late 20s, he refused a job that would pay more but would give him less time to practice.
yeah,
So he kept in the same band, earning the
I can
same.
relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kier?
So social media, like your account is massive and you're posting all the time. Have you ever felt any pressure with all of that, with the growth and posting?
Um, yeah, I mean, there comes a point where, I mean, honestly, for a long time, I was able to kind of separate it mentally, where I don't know, I knew it was real. I knew that the followers were real, but I never really treated it like that. It's like in the end of the day, all I'm really doing is playing my drums and clicking some buttons on my phone. And, it didn't really start to sink in that it was, real people until like some really well-known players that I grew up following are suddenly watching me and commenting and sending me DMs. And that's where it started to feel a little weird. And then your brain starts thinking, oh my word, every time I put a video out, like who knows who's seeing it and watching and examining everything and seeing all the flaws. And so your brain can freak out. But honestly, most of the time, for some reason I just don't think about it all that much. I honestly don't think about the content that I create very much at all. I mean, if it's a lesson video, I put a lot of work into those, but or if I'm like showing off a product or something for a company, that's a lot of energy. But the 99% of my posts are just, clips that I turn the cameras on when I practice, and then I watch it later. And if I like something, then okay, I'll share that, and if not, okay, whatever. So yeah, I don't feel a ton of pressure. And if I did, I'd really start to hate it. And in all honesty, I'm not a super social media type person. If it wasn't for drumming, I wouldn't be on social media. It's just not something that I'm a very kind of I don't know, my personality, I'm not a super outgoing person. I don't like being around huge crowds of people. I much rather be like with a close group of friends or family, or you could just leave me alone like for a month by myself and I'd be okay because I could just work on my stuff. And like that's just my personality. So um social media was only something that I did because a friend of mine was like, hey, you should start putting drum videos on there. um and it's an amazing tool. Like 15 years ago, I wouldn't be able to make a living at all doing what I do. So it's amazing that there's a way to be someone that they tell you not to be. Don't be the guy that just practices all the time. No one's going to pay you to play that. And now I can actually be the guy that just practices and plays a bunch of ridiculous whatever. And I, to have social media and be able to make a living, and also just be able to teach people, to help people understand things they want to understand. It's fun to run into people who were like me years ago when I was like super hungry for information and I just wanted to understand things. And now I can help people and the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, I know. Okay, now I get it. And so that's fun. I enjoy that side of it a lot. I really like teaching. But yeah, social media, it's a weird world. I try to avoid most of it. I don't get involved with many. Like I don't go in and comment on stuff very often unless I'm just saying this is cool or whatever. But I don't know. I try to kind of mentally separate myself from it most of the time, because you can get kind of sucked into it and start worrying about what people think and stuff. And the end of the day, like this is my drumming. If you want to watch it, great. If not, no problem. See you later. So
Don't you
that's
think don't you think that this approach is exactly what made you have a lot of followers? Because you weren't trying to do anything. You just did what you did.
Yeah, I think that's, if I had to guess, I would say that's a big part of it. Is I'm not, unless I'm advertising a lesson video or something, I'm not trying to sell you anything, or um, I'm not trying to put some sort of like, uh, look at what I'm doing kind of a thing. I just put a drum video together and put it out. And, you know, from the beginning, that's kind of all it was, is like, maybe someone will want to watch a clip of me practicing. So I threw it on Instagram, and then it was like, wow, a bunch of people liked that. I'll just keep throwing videos on there. And that's still what I do. I just kind of randomly throw videos out. And yeah, I think that's probably a big part of it, is I'm not constantly trying to say, hey, look at what I'm doing, or
Mm.
explaining, or constantly explaining what I'm doing, or I don't know. But that's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts about social media. Like, that's why I wouldn't be on it all the time. So it makes sense that I would avoid doing that.
It's interesting that you're talking about personality, um, because it seems to me that online it's so much easier in a sense to connect with people and do the networking thing, which I think, out in the real world can be really intimidating. Um, yeah, like for me, I would definitely, the thought of like approaching any drummer or
You actually have to talk to people.
I've actually talked to people, it's like, oh, no, I'm not sure about this. Whereas online, it just seems like there's a little like buffer there, so it's easier. And I'm wondering if that's like kind of, again, like why it's working for you in a sense, because normally you might not be like, hey, how you doing? I'm
Right.
Justin Scott. And then it's just kind of taken off and
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. In real life, like, that's the thing. If it came down to like doing it the way it had to be done years ago, where it's like networking and going to jams and meeting people, I just don't know how I would have ever made that work, because it's just not my personality at all. I probably, I love drumming enough where I probably would have tried to figure it out. Um, but yeah, it's just not who I am. And social media does allow you to put yourself out there without really putting yourself out there.
mm-hmm.
And but yeah, I mean, it is weird how comfortable it is to talk to people like in a DM or something, whereas, meeting them in real life would be like, if I had to talk to Benny Greb or someone in a DM, it would be like, okay, no problem. But if I had, and I've met him once, but if I was just sitting there having a conversation, I'd be like, wow, I'm talking to Benny Greb right now. This is really weird. But for some reason, when it's on my phone, I can mentally, like, I'm playing a video game or something. It's not real. Um, and that's how it kind of feels sometimes with, you know, because I'll think about it sometimes, like, wow, that video got 100,000 views. And like, that's a lot of people watching that. But I never really think about it. I never really think about how many people that is watching something. And then you start thinking like, man, I bet like 10,000 of those people really didn't like what I was doing. And then you start thinking about all the mistakes that you made. And so I don't know. I don't go down those mental paths, but
That's
yeah,
good.
I definitely think it's social media is the only reason I have a career in drumming right now.
I don't know. I think you'd have one anyway. Um, you know.
He could, yeah, maybe if it was the 80s, you could start a teaching people how to have a career, not talking to anyone.
Yeah, and I'd have one student, and I'd probably be broke. But I honestly don't know what I would have done 20 years ago. I'd probably be playing with some band or something, and probably not be super happy with how I spend my time, is my guess. But at the same time, when I was teaching at a music store, I was making decent money there, and I enjoyed it. I mean, the worst drum lesson I ever had was still better than any regular job I had. Because in the end of the day, I'm still sitting on a drum set, and if the kid doesn't want to learn, okay, I'll just sit here and practice, and then I'll tell your mom you didn't listen, because but if you're not going to practice, then I'll sit here and practice, And so like teaching was still great, even when it was at a music store. And I probably would have still chosen that path over trying to go on tour or something.
Mm.
The worst day drumming is better than the best day in the office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I had plenty of jobs. I've tried. I had a lot of jobs growing up, so I've experienced a lot of different things. And I would much rather be teaching really bad drum lessons all day than any of those jobs. So
Kira?
Would you mind talking us through your endorsements? Because I think when you started social media, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you had any, and then I don't think you approached anyone either, did you? Can you talk us through that?
yeah. So no, I didn't have any. And the I think the first one was reflex pads. I reached out to them and said, I like your pads. I'd love to try one out, because they were hard to order, because they're kind of sporadic. And so I just messaged him, and he was like, "Hey, I'll send you one. I'd love for you to be an artist." I was like, "Oh, that's amazing." And then a few of them kind of happened like that. Actually, the guy at Reflex, I think his name is Guy, actually. He's the one that got me in touch with Zildjian and Vic Firth. So he made the introduction to them, and then I got those deals. And then other ones kind of worked out the same way, where someone I knew reached out to me. Tama was Ian. He's the rep in the UK. He's the Tama and Zildjian rep out there, I believe. And he found me and just said, "Man, I love your drumming. I'd love for you to be a Tama artist." And I was like, "Cool, let's talk about it." And then it ended up working out. And Remo approached me a few years ago. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was like you'd make one relationship, and then they would kind of introduce you to other brands. Like Ian got me hooked up with SE microphones and QSC audio. And yeah, it's just, you build a relationship, and then they kind of get you connected with other people. But yeah, I mean, endorsement deals are they're very cool. Like they shouldn't be the reason why you're trying to do everything.
That's the thing I want to touch because I don't want to put it on the spot. I just want to discuss exactly that. These are brands you would be using anyway, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, like with Tama, I always had Tama snares. I loved Tama snares, but I didn't have any of their drum sets. I was using Gretsch drums, mainly because I've always liked Gretsch kits. I've thought they're great kits, but also the music store I taught at sold Gretsch drums, so I could get them at a nice discount. And for me, it was always like Gretsch and Tama. And so I just didn't happen to own any Tama drum kits, but I had their snares, and I always knew that if I could sign with a company, it would be Tama, because I loved their snares, their drums, their hardware. Everything they made was fantastic. And then they just happened to find me, and that worked out. So like, but yeah, Zildjian cymbals, that's always been the cymbals I wanted to play. Vic Firth sticks, like Remo heads, like it's what I would be using anyway. Endorsement deals are nice. Obviously, they're very helpful. I think it's perfectly fine to have goals of getting endorsements. Like that's a good thing to motivate you and everything, but it shouldn't be what you're like. That shouldn't be like the thing you're trying to get. Like, oh, if I could just get that endorsement, then I'd be good. Because it's like once you've got the endorsement, you realize nothing's really changed. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm playing much nicer drums now than I was before. And but in the end of the day, it's like nothing's really changed. You still have to work. You still have to keep pushing, and there should be more. For me, the goal is to be able to keep doing what I'm doing. Like, can I keep this process going where I'm able to make a living and focus on practicing and getting better all the time? And then everything else that happens, making money, endorsements, and whatever else could come along, those are like bonuses. Those are great things, but that's what's cool about having your, like, my main goal is to just consistently be able to keep the process going. I always think of it kind of in terms of like someone who climbs Mount Everest. There's a lot of people that have the goal of getting to the top of Mount Everest. And then you've got guys who just like, man, I just love climbing Mount Everest. I'm just going to climb it like 20 or 30 times. And they're going to get to the top multiple times, and they're going to get really good at climbing the mountain because they just like climbing. And then the other people are like, man, the mountain is what I have to do to get to my goal of getting on top of it. So all the work is just like the stuff they have to do. And I like to think the other way around. I'd rather just think of the work as being the goal, and then all the other stuff is a bonus. So endorsements help me a lot because it allows me to just use all the equipment that makes my life easier and that makes it more enjoyable. But it's certainly not like something that I was like desperately trying to get.
And I'm pretty sure that a substandard brand would contacted you. You wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna use your crappy symbols just because I want to say I have an endorsement." You know?
No, I mean, in fact, before I had any, like before I was with Zildjian or Vic Firth or anybody, I mean, companies would approach, a particular cymbal company actually said that we'll make you your own signature line of cymbals, and you can, we'll pay you every time we sell one of your cymbals. And I was like, that's a huge honor. Like, it's really nice that you would say that. It's crazy to me that you would make me my own line of but it was like, I don't want to play your cymbals. Like, I love Zildjian cymbals. I'm going to play Zildjian, and then eventually I'll get a Zildjian endorsement. And that was how my brain worked. And then eventually I got a Zildjian endorsement. So yeah, you shouldn't just take a company just be, most endorsement deals are not going to be like so huge that it's worth playing them just because they're giving you the deal. Like, stick with the brands that you really love. And then it shows brand loyalty. And if you're really trying to get with a certain company, if they see that you're actually really loyal to the brand, even when you could have gotten endorsement somewhere else, that can certainly be helpful. But yeah, it's not like it's a great thing. I'm not saying it's not great to have endorsements, but it shouldn't be like the thing you're working for,
Cool.
So I guess I want to ask you about your goals. You want to keep doing what you're doing. Will that include ever some clinics, Drumeo? Like, do you have any like future goals, or is it purely like you have found the thing?
I would love to get into clinics at some point. I don't know how that works nowadays with everything going on, but I would love to at some point get into the clinic world. I feel like a drum clinic would be an ideal place for the way that I teach and play. Like, I feel like I would fit into that world of being a clinician. But it would probably take me a while to get used to it. So, like, if I ever do clinics, you probably don't want to come to the first few because I'm going to be trying to get the hang of it, and it'll probably be terrible. But I would love to eventually do clinics and get into that world a little bit, because I do feel like I would enjoy it, and I do think I'd be pretty good at doing that. So I might eventually do some online clinics, try to do some like streaming clinic type things. I've talked a little bit about that with some people. And then, yeah, as far as like Drumeo, I don't know. I've never really been approached, and it's not something that, I don't know. I don't know if it's beneficial to me to do something like Drumeo, but I don't know. I'd have to talk to Drumeo about it. But yeah, clinics I'd love to do. I'd love to get out there and do some of that. And then I'm going to continue to do the online lessons. I have a lot of online videos I'd like to create, and build a new website and do some stuff like that, and just kind of up the production level of the videos that I make and things like that. So that's kind of my main focus right now is I'm going to be working on a new website, getting new lesson videos made. And then at some point, I'd certainly love to get into doing some clinics.
Great.
Great.
Cool. Yeah, your lesson videos are great. I think I've got 2 of them.
Oh, thank you.
They are awesome. So people download it because they're fucking good. Worth it.
Well, I appreciate it.
Like that's all right. We'll put your like info on our.
Yeah, in the comment section, we're gonna put all the info to your Instagram and YouTube and website and everything.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean the website is very it's very cheaply put together. It's just a place where I could have a store so people could buy things. So I'm working with a friend of mine who's going to be building a whole new website, where it's going to actually be like a real site with a bio and pictures and everything. Because right now it's just a very not put together website, but it works. It works for what I'm doing. But yeah, that's jscottdrummer.net.
Cool.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. It's always fun to talk drums. I could talk drums all day.
We
Us
too.
For the episode, could you send me a picture, or can I steal one from somewhere just to make a little thumbnail for YouTube?
Yeah, definitely. I think I have one on my phone. I can